question for a person who designs equipment is, what's the kind of equipment that you use and you find most beneficial? I know you talked earlier about running your company through a computer network. Might touch on that, and then tell us also maybe about some of the other things that you find very helpful.
Sure. Obviously, the computer, whether you're a quadriplegic or paraplegic or have some other, you got some visual impairment or hearing impairment, I mean, technology is our friend in that area, and there's, with some adaptation, there's nothing that a disabled person can't do competitively with an able-bodied person. And my good friend Gary Karp, who lives about 2 blocks from here, is a big advocate for workplace accommodations, because people with disabilities actually were more loyal and were more reliable than a lot of able-bodied people, and make good employees. But the computer, again, computers in particular are good for people with disabilities. But as far as adaptive equipment, obviously I have a specialized toilet seat and shower equipment that I use at home here. I've got a couple of my multi-chairs so that I don't have to move them around, one over the toilet and one for showering. But I also have a lighter one that I take when I travel. Recently I'm not as independent in the bathroom as I used to be. I'd go, maybe I'm just a little more intelligent about that kind of stuff, or because I didn't have any options. But in the beginning, I would literally go to a trade show all by myself and with some help set up the booth and do all the sales activities, and then do my bathroom equipment, take care of myself back at the hotel. And it was very exhaustive and took a lot of time. But now I go with one other guy, able-bodied, my VP, or Kaiser, the material guy. So I've got somebody there to help me if I try to fall. Because some of the transfers are pretty difficult because of the ADA requirements about the toilets being so high.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Yeah, I mean, they were designed probably for a senior that can't get up from a low toilet.
Right.
And they don't know about side care, bowel care, access issues or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Other adaptive equipment, obviously the van. I've got a Toyota Sienna minivan, so I can independently drive anywhere with it. And in fact, driving is one area where I always felt that instantly, us with disabilities, we had parity or equality with any able-bodied. I'd be willing to race anybody that's able-bodied, and I'd probably be competitive on the racetrack because it's all in your brain, and technology helps us drive just like anybody else can drive. So I think that's the equipment that I need.
I noticed you use a assisted manual chair.
That's a good thing we could mention. I think it's the almost the ideal for a functioning quad that's kind of bridged between a power wheelchair. I started off with the Quickie. I had one of the very early. I had Quickie serial number like 120 or something. Back when the only choices were Quickie or Quadra. I had that for 5 years, but then I started having some shoulder problems, and at the architectural firm I got in that position where I didn't want to go to meetings because took me a long time to creep through the carpeting, and then I got a power chair. So I kind of made the decision to get a real serious power chair for work, but I thought that the manual chair was better at home. And right now I have a Tylite Aero Z, one of their aluminum frame rigid chairs, but I use the Emotion power wheels, and I think it's the perfect compromise because it's basically a manual chair with some assist, and you get a little bit of exercise from pushing it around. It's possible, and I don't want to sound like it's a commercial, but I've been to Hyde Park in London and Tokyo and the Ginza, and I went from the Guggenheim Museum in Manhattan down to Madison Square Garden, and then pushed from our hotel in Seattle up to Pikes Peak. So I basically, and 20 or 30 cities in and around the United States with them. So it's a manual chair with assist that you can, with some help, take apart and put in a rent-a-car. Previously I'd traveled with the Quickie power wheelchair, and I'd have to rent a shovel, and it was like a lot more difficult and more expensive. So the Emotion wheels, for me anyway, it also, I guess the story is that if you're in a wheelchair long enough, you're going to start having some kind of shoulder problems unless you're really good about exercising everything, because I think pushing works the backside of your shoulders, and it's imbalanced. But the Emotion wheels are a really good solution.
Now, the batteries on these, are they, do they go through some kind of special thing when you put them on an aircraft?
Well, it's interesting that the sort of Achilles heel, or the big problem with these, it was the batteries. The previous ones, anybody that's had them know that they're expensive and they don't last very long, and you'd have to always have a spare set. You have to be recharging them and juggling batteries back and forth. This, in January, I think they released these are lithium-ion, which, yeah, that's a good question. The answer is that lithium-ion has a potential for blowing up. So it's very important that you actually take the batteries off and bring them aboard the plane, which is what I do anyway.
Okay.
So if you separate the batteries from the rest of the chair, it's not been a problem at all. I wheel down the jetway right to the edge of the plane and get in one of those aisle chairs, and then I have the batteries taken from the hub, and I bring the batteries with me on board the plane, and then the rest of the chair, it just goes down the stairs right there onto the plane. And so it's just like, at that point, like any other manual chair.